UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, psyop, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Good evening to the greatest audience on the planet. Welcome to UAP Crossfire with my co-hosts Chris DePerno, Dan Carlson, and Don Ecker, myself, Commander Cobra. It's great to see all of you and great to be with you after our holiday breaks. I'm going to be speaking very fast because we have a great guest tonight that I really am looking forward to introducing to this greatest audience on the planet and my co-hosts. And we're going to really focus on 3i Atlas. And that's really how I found him. I caught him one morning driving to work on the famous Coast to Coast. He received some sketchy emails from me, as I often send out to people when I'm trying to get them to come on board the show. He kindly returned the email, and we had a couple phone calls. And it's been a very, very interesting dive into his work. More on him in 1 second. As always, the show is going to go very fast tonight. I will not get to my normal ending. So I'm going to say up front, God's peace that surpasses all knowledge and understanding. And tonight might be one of those nights where God's peace may be the big winner at the end of it. Also, I want you to be thinking about Professor James McCanney and James McCanney's science. We'll be flashing it up on the screen. He has an incredible YouTube show that I would suggest. Jump on board if you like anything that you hear tonight. Quickly, I'll take it around the horn, starting with Chris. How are you, sir, up in your part of the world?
I'm doing great tonight. You know, we've got a little bit of snow, but it's a beautiful winter wonderland in Buffalo, New York.
And you, Silverback Don Ecker, how are you? And Miss Vicky, more importantly.
We got through Thanksgiving just fine. We're gearing up now for Christmas. As a matter of fact, my lovely lady gave me a subtle hint today when she drug in the artificial Christmas tree. So we're going to be setting that up very soon. And she said, "You are going to help decorate it." And I said, "Well, of course I am, just like last year." So we're good.
And you, sir, Mr. Carlson, the Padre, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you, Commander?
Very good. So let's bring our guest on, the Professor James McCanney. Now, a couple things as we're bringing up James. I had an interesting, obviously the supermoon's going on tonight, and we have a super guest. And those are James's websites as well as some of his most interesting work is behind him, if a little bit that you can read there, and I suggest you grab some of it. I saw this earlier today, and I thought it was kind of kismic, James, and I want your reaction to it. It was the quote of the day. I get these things sent to me all the time. A human being is part of a whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. And that was by Mr. Albert Einstein, a fellow professor like yourself. I think it's pretty fitting for tonight, and considering some of the stuff that we talked about. So you are a man of quite a bit of experience that probably surpasses some of the greatest academic credentials I've ever seen, but field work experience and actual tangible stuff that has been produced. I am in awe. To be honest, I was just amazed when we started to get together. As I told you, as you're coming on air, I was very pleased that you were willing to put up with my goofy emails and somewhat clumsy outreach to get you on there. And I've really, in the last couple of weeks, thoroughly enjoyed catching up on some of your stuff and picked up the books, and I'm very impressed. So welcome to UAP Crossfire and my co-hosts. And I'm going to start it out with Chris DePerno tonight, because we're really focused on 3i Atlas. I don't want to give it away too quickly, but I think you're probably one of the more critical thinking people that I've heard in this absolute storm that is surrounding this space event? Chris, jump in.
Yeah, okay. I thought maybe you were talking to me, and I go, holy crap.
No, I'm not going to ask you any hard questions.
I go, whoa, he must have been drinking early today to start that off. Anyway,
That was last week.
it's so great to have you here with us. And I'm going to start off with 3i. The first question is, and I found this amazing. So the common knowledge of a comet is that it's a dirty snowball. You referred to it as like a dirty snowball. People have referred to it like it breaks off. It's got rocks and clumps and ice and everything. But you said nay. You said there's more than that. It actually can accumulate energy and give off energy, and also accumulate matter. Where there's a theoretic thing that it may actually become bigger and bigger. Am I correct on that?
Well, the whole idea that the comet is giving something off is in what I found out was incorrect. And what I started analyzing was electromagnetic phenomenon in the solar system, but actually it's an electrical discharge. And it took me a while. This is going back to my theoretical work in the late 1970s. It took me a while to figure out where this electrical charging was coming from in the whole plasma process, where there's the fusion is up in the atmosphere of the sun. It's not in the core. The sun is giving off a proton wind, an excess current of protons in the solar wind. And just that statement alone is very complicated because I say an excess current. I don't say there are more protons. I say there's an excess current. Anyway, this sweeps out the solar system, builds up a capacitor. And when things come into this capacitor, it's like the backyard bug killer, it discharges it. And this picture behind me here, right there, it was written in 1986. This was a diagram that I had in a 1986 publication called Dynamics of a Small Comet. But a lot of things happen, and it has to do with the charge to mass ratio of electrons compared to protons. But basically, in the discharge, there's a charging of the nucleus, and the nucleus charges up, the region around the nucleus charges up negatively. And all this positively charged material then is drawn into the comet. So it's a totally different concept, and that means the comet is growing. And so if you look at 3i Atlas, what are the things that they keep talking about they can't explain? The sunward spike, well, that's a common feature of all comets, according to this model. Now they're showing X-rays. That's another feature that's standard in this model. The green comet coma around the nucleus is a Debye shield. All of these are electrical terms when you're dealing with plasma. So anyway, it's a whole different concept of what a comet is. And one of the biggest issues we find with 3i Atlas is that everybody out there, whether they're Avi Loeb from Harvard, or whether it's NASA, or whether it's all of the internet entourage of wannabes, I call them, they're all using this dirty snowball comet model, which doesn't explain anything. So that's one of the big issues going into this whole discussion.
Can you explain the X-ray theory to me, Professor? Because that was interesting too, because I never heard of X-rays being involved with a comet or in the solar system like that.
Yeah, once again, this diagram behind me here, the sun would be down at this where my hand is here. And so what happens is the electron beam, because of the charge to mass ratio of electrons being the highest, 2,000 times more than protons and millions of times more than ions, the electrons are the primary charge carrier in any plasma discharge. So what happens is as they approach the nucleus, it's like a rock in a river where there's a pressure on the upstream side of the rock. And so the upstream pressure in a plasma discharge is electrons. And so it creates a positive charge or a negative charge around the comet nucleus. But then what happens as the electrons are coming out from the sun, they see that negative charge, so they slow down, and that's what we call Bremsstrahlung X-rays. It's the same kind of X-rays that are used in a medical X-ray machine or in a dental X-ray machine, Bremsstrahlung X-rays. So a natural part of this whole concept is X-rays on the sunward side, and they were discovered in 1996. But now we get into a very strange political scenario where NASA is literally hiding data that would prove this concept correct.
Why would they hide data, sir?
Well, that's an interesting question in itself. And here we get into the psyops part of science, what I call garbage science that's pawned off to the public.
Yeah, we get a lot of that.
So what you see in NASA, like when NASA had this little dog and pony show a couple of weeks ago, where they were going to release all this photographic evidence, etc., and they came out with 4 fuzzy photos, just terrible, and claimed that this was all they had. Ridiculous. The whole issue is that Avi Loeb, who is the Harvard professor that claims this is an alien spaceship, his story wouldn't even exist if they didn't have the dirty snowball comet model.
Right.
Professor, I gotta break in there.
Yeah.
Loeb has suggested that is not within the realm of possibility, but I never heard him specifically state that this was an alien ship.
Yeah, it's very subtle. You're correct.
You just said that he claimed it was an alien craft. He never said that. I never heard him say that. I've been following this very closely.
But the implication is there, and when he goes after NASA for not releasing data, certainly the implication in the story is that right out of the chute, he said the probability, he was using probabilistic statistics, that the probability that this was a natural item was almost zero. And so he's always hedging. But if you look at the following, they are convinced that that's what he's saying.
Well, conversely, he did bring Kim Kardashian on his research team. So
that has to be, when I heard that, I just about fell out of my chair. And that was an interesting story because she went to NASA, and this is something that a lot of people cannot even get a hold of NASA, let alone get an answer. And the first thing she said is she thought NASA didn't go to the moon, to which they replied that they went 6 times and it was the pat answer. And she didn't like that. They were kind of like blowing her off, And then she came back and she said, well, what about this 3i Atlas? Is it a spaceship? And they kind of gave her an answer she didn't like. So she joined Avi Loeb's team. He invited her, which was very strange. But if you understand the whole psyops that's going on here, what they're doing, Kim Kardashian brings in a huge audience, a massive, massive international audience into the fray on the side of this is a spaceship. Because if she says something, wear nightgown with sequins, everybody puts on a nightgown with sequins. And so the same thing with, the whole psyops issue here is that to bring in the alien issue. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I realize this is not my turn yet, but a couple of things that I feel compelled to address. Number one, I've been dealing with NASA off and on since 1989. And for me, as a researcher, a writer, and what have you, they personified NASA, never a straight answer. Going all the way back to when I discovered that the original astronauts that went to the moon armed. They had weapons with them. Now, I finally got NASA to admit that. They tried to talk all the way around me about it. They're public affairs people, but they did admit it. But I've never trusted NASA since then. And also, something we're going to be addressing a little bit later, the Jesuit astronomy team and the Vatican, which I've got to say, I have real hard time believing a lot that's coming out of there also. So I'll step back, shut up now, and sorry, Chris.
Yeah. Let me just quick address that. And it's a part of this whole thing that goes way back. And it's what I call the tier level of science, in which tier 1 level, and I've been around the science industry my whole life, my whole career, 50 years. And I've been around tier 1 scientists. These, I call them military scientists, and they are a breed apart. You don't see their names, you don't see their faces, you don't really know who they are. And I've had them come out and talk to me, discuss things, ask for solutions, and you never see them. You never get an answer from them. Tier 2 science is what we normally think of, like the Carl Sagans, the top scientists at NASA, etc. The Neil deGrasse Tysons, who's really in my categorization as a tier 3 science. He doesn't do research. But these are the mouthpieces, and they have an agenda that they can't just walk up to a microphone and say something. They're under strict orders, and everything they say, like this little dog and pony show that NASA put on 2 weeks ago to release this data, that was totally scripted. Totally.
What do you think their agenda is, sir? That's an interesting point that you brought up.
Yeah.
They have an agenda. What do you think the agenda is?
The agenda is to keep the public pretty stupid. And this whole psyops.
I would say they get an A+ for that.
Yeah, and that's intentional. That's intentional, and that's why, for example, my show. Let me just give you an example. I was contacted. I've had a radio show for 25 years, the James McCanney Science Hour at the Crossroads on WWCR, a large international radio shortwave station. And this outfit came to me. It's a studio out of New York, and to produce a show. And so we called it Master of Science with James McCanney. That's my current podcast. But we started out with this studio in New York City, and they had maybe 100 podcasts. And mine took off. Like week 3, I was doing 250,000 views, and it was going exponential. And so it was growing. It was being listed on about 15 podcast platforms. And then the video part, the visual part, was on X and YouTube and what were the other ones? Anyway, but it was going viral. And one day I just got a notice that they shut down. No explanation. And then I started out my current channel. This is the point. And I'm being shadow banned. I can't get more than 500 viewers a week. And that's they have the ability to push things out. And you see these 3i Atlas channels that came out of nowhere. And within 2 episodes, they've got 500,000 views and 500,000 subscribers. And most of those are fake. Those are bots. But at any rate, they're pushing this agenda, and they certainly don't want my input because I'm bringing in information that basically kills their entire psyops.
So, Chris,
I thought your interview was very unique. I saw some of your interviews, and I thought your way of approaching things was unique and very excellent. I thought it was. It was an A+ in my book.
Oh, so, thank you.
I'm going to bring the Padre in on this, but I do want to interject one interesting part. Very quickly, the science portion of this, the theory portion of it, and explanation in the beginning of this show explains a lot of the behaviors that we see going on. And it should be, at least with the public, the vast majority of people, a 50-50 kind of acceptance to hear it out. Now, it's being rejected by a large number of people because frankly, it's not sexy enough. It doesn't fit the thing. And we're driving humanity into this frenzy to accept what I call junk science. There's no critical analysis, and there's this constant business that only the credentialed class of experts are the only people that can interpret what's happening around us. And I look at the financial crises, the pandemic foolishness that went on there. All those things lead up to now the latest event that is happening here. With that said, Padre, sorry for letting me jump in there, but I want to get you in and then I'll swing back to Don.
Oh, thank you, Commander. Can you hear me okay? Am
Yes.
I coming through all right? Okay, good. I wanted to ask you along this lines, Professor, about the resistance of, let's call it, institutional science to new ideas, because you're not the only one. There just seems to be a barrier erected and it's across multiple disciplines that keeps new and innovative ideas from getting funding. Is this simply people wanting to maintain their own little fiefdoms, or is there something more sinister at work in your view?
Well, both, because you look at this little dog and pony show that NASA had releasing photos. These scientists, the very last one said, the woman who was like in kind of general in charge of science at NASA said, "Oh, we're so open. We just give all of the data. We welcome all of this opportunity to mix." Complete baloney. I mean, NASA doesn't mix with any. They don't. They're from the very beginning back. I had access to data when I was at Cornell, and I was one of the reasons they locked it down, because I was using their data to prove them wrong. They can't have that. And so when Carl Sagan did the Cosmos series, that solidified what I call the axioms of astronomy, the dirty snowball comet model, the idea that all the planets formed at one time 4.5 billion years ago, that there's no electricity in outer space, and that the universe began in the Big Bang. All of that is just what we call standard science, and it bleeds over into archaeology. You have to understand that astronomy is the top of the pyramid, and I learned that when I was at Cornell. The archaeology and the astronomy and other departments had to follow suit. They had to, any interpretation they had of data, of say archaeology or anything like that, had to correspond with the idea that the Earth has not had any major encounters in outer space. Maybe a little comet hit Earth at one point, or something like that, but that's the extent of it. And so anyway, that's part of it. But then you have the culture, the ivory tower culture of tier 2 science. Now, this is tier 2 science. Believe me, the tier 1 people know what's going on, and they know I'm right. And, but the tier 2 science, these are the professors that get funding, publications in peer-reviewed journals. Interesting, when NASA had its little photo release a couple of weeks ago on 3i Atlas, the very last guy said, all of the photos will come down once they're downloaded. They'll be sifted through, I don't know the term he used, but something like that, through our standard scientists and published in peer-reviewed journals. And that's what Commander Cobra was talking about here, that they, it's all cut and dried. Who's going to get the data? Who's going to interpret it? And then how does that flow into textbooks, publications? The news media is commensurate with this. If you look at science, or space.com or spaceweather.com, all of these outlets for NASA information, they will not, the only thing they do is publish gee whiz articles about how great NASA is, or, they're all flaunting these 4 photographs that NASA released. They were months old. The woman was saying we've had 20 different telescope facilities, spaceborne, landborne, and everything, looking at this comet from the beginning, and they show 4 photographs that are a month old and out of focus. I mean, it's just bizarre.
I need to push back, excuse me, just a little bit on something you said as pertains to spaceweather.com. My background, I have a few decades in meteorology of various disciplines, and I currently use spaceweather.com to map current electromagnetic storm activity. So for instance, today there's a space weather warning for a G3 geomagnetic storm. Are you saying that we should not trust that information?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Okay. When this is the fine line. this is the interesting part about it, because there's an old expression: if you want to catch fish, you need a good bait. And so a lot of it, 90, probably 5% of it is completely valid, good. But when they get down to what are comets? Oh, they're dirty snowballs, little icy wanderers, little interlopers from beyond, sublimating in the solar wind. So when they get down to these axioms, that's where they're marching the party line. But
your theory on comets, it's not the dirty snowball theory. It is that they are some type of an electrical, I don't want to say device, but is their purpose then to balance the positive negative charge imbalances they encounter, or what would be the function of comets from an astrophysics point of view?
You mean with my model here?
Yes, with your model.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because for example, our galaxy has a proton capacitor, and our sun is discharging it. And that's how the hydrogen gets into the atmosphere of the sun constantly to keep it supplied with a load of hydrogen for fusion. The comets, the big comets, of which there are some, and one of the things we know of historically is there were big comets, very, very big ones, that come through the solar, like Jupiter size, and discharging the solar capacitor, and they can wreak havoc with things. And we don't have any history of these, but most comets are small. If you look at just the statistical makeup of the size distribution of objects in the solar system, most of them are small, like gazillions of little things the size of a tennis ball, things that are bigger. And then, but the electrical effects, interestingly enough, only take place for the very, very small things. Although the big objects that discharge the solar capacitor, like Hale-Bopp was a pretty big comet. It was in the solar system for 6 years. It changed its orbit. It added mass. It originally had a companion, which spiraled in and became part of the nucleus. But it lost about half of its solar period in that 6-year time frame when it was going through the solar system. So it's literally becoming a planet. And it turns out that Harrington, the Naval Observatory director, back in the 80s, was doing a search under a NASA contract for literally what they call Planet X. I have the contracts. And he discovered it and then took photographs in 1991, made the final photographs from New Zealand with an 8-inch astrograph, and it had a companion. So that companion allowed them to calculate the mass. And eventually, they didn't realize this, but eventually it became the nucleus of Hale-Bopp. I have a whole book on this topic, and that whole PSYOPs, this was another major PSYOPs, to talk about Planet X and keep everybody from looking at the thing that was really Planet X, and that was Hale-Bopp. But,
so the comet then is the condensation nuclei of a new planet.
The small ones never grow because they don't have enough gravitational attraction to hold the material that's coming in, and that material neutralizes and it just blows out with the solar wind. Some of it can bake on the surface because of the electron beam, but generally the little comets don't grow, just the big ones, which is opposite of what the dirty snowball comet model predicts. The dirty snowball comet model predicts that only the light nucleus, the very small nuclei, can have their orbits perturbed. And once again, we see this with 3I Atlas. It's pretty massive, but it's having serious gravitational or non-gravitational perturbations. And that's because the larger comets, the one thing about 3I Atlas is it's moving very fast. So it's a very large discharge of the solar capacitor. It's charging a lot. That's why it has this amazing sunward spike, and X-rays and gravitational anomalies. So it's a complicated situation, but it's totally different than the ice ball model.
Commander, may I ask a question here? Just
if you promise to be quick, because we need to bring Don on.
Okay, real quick, why the big secrecy about it, though, Professor? I mean, lay people like me, first of all, wouldn't understand half of what they're saying. I mean, second grade was the best 3 years of my life. So, I mean, what would be the secret, the hiding all this stuff?
Well, I always thought, because I went through decades literally fighting this thing through the 80s, through the 90s, etc. And I was on a radio show with Art Bell. It was literally, we were doing a Christmas special one year, and we were talking about the Russian space program, something I knew quite a bit about. And he just came out of nowhere and he said, Jim, your comet model is clearly correct. The snowball model doesn't make any sense at all. What's the big deal? Why is it not accepted? And I said, well, they'd have to eat crow and they'd have to republish all these papers in published peer-reviewed journals would be wrong. They'd have to change the textbook. And he said, no. All that could be changed. All that could be fixed. They could shoot you. They could steal it. They could, change everything. And within a year, nobody would know the difference. He said, something else is going on. And I was like, what the heck else is going on? So finally, after a while, I figured out, that there's an essential, this PSYOPs with 3I Atlas has been going on for decades. It's just that this comet seemed to fit their bill for at this time, because this is the whole PSYOPs is to make people aware that there's an alien presence and bring in the new world government. So we all have to join governments, and NASA already has this in place, by the way, the International Planetary Defense Agency within NASA. And so the need to keep this theoretical structure in place at tier 2 level is necessary for public control. And it's if you think about it for a minute, you think, well, that's pretty crazy, but that's what the actual answer is, that they have to keep it's like the old country western song. This guy's on the porch and I don't know, so his wife is getting mad at him. And the punchline is, it's my story and I'm sticking to it. And that's NASA, tier 2 level NASA. That's their story and they're sticking to it.
I'm going to jump in here to bring Don in.
Yeah.
But I do want to circle back to a couple of things you just said right after Don. Please, Decker, jump in.
All right. Looking at 3I Atlas, and the initial news articles about it were, on the surface, for me, astounding. It was identified as only the third interstellar object coming into our solar system from outside. Now, Professor, when I was in college, my major was history. I am a history geek, all right? And if you believe mainstream academia, all right, the human race only surfaced roughly 6,000 years ago from written records, etc. Okay? We only have 6,000, and even that 6,000 years is minuscule. Now, in the last number of years, that's been proven to be absolutely erroneous, with discoveries like Göbekli Tepe going back almost 12,000 years ago. So I did a little thinking, and my thinking goes like this. Our solar system is roughly 5 billion years old. Earth, roughly 4.5 billion years. And somewhere in there, between the first and second billion years, life first evolved on the planet. Originally single-celled, later it became multi-celled. But the planet, our planet, suffered at least 5 extinction events. Okay? Now, not everybody agrees on what all those events were caused by, but certainly some of them were astronomical impacts. And roughly 11,600 years ago, there was apparently another one that hit in North America, and no idea where it came from, although it's believed today the Taurid meteor shower or remnants from this giant comet that is claimed to have broken up. Elements of it hit the planet. Something caused the ice age to suddenly stop, recede. The oceans flooded. They rose hundreds of feet in height. An entire species of megafauna, not only here in North America, but also in Europe, were gone in the blink of an eye. And human civilization that was here, such as it was, the so-called Clovis people, they disappeared. Now, I was thinking about that, and it just makes no sense that we have not had more interstellar visitors enter our solar system in all that time. So my question is in a couple of parts. Number one, do you believe that we've had other interstellar objects? Number two, if we have, and I'm sure we probably have, do you think that they were similar to Three-Eye Atlas, Oumuamua, and possibly other objects entering our solar system? And number three, why all the hoopla about the fact that these are interstellar? Because my God, the universe is beyond imagination. There could be literally anything out there flying through space.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take them backwards. The third one first. This is the third one they've actually detected, and they're just getting equipment online. I mean, these things are probably flying around all the time. And so we're just starting to detect them, just like the Kuiper Belt was not known, 20 years ago? Didn't even have a clue that there was Sedna out there. And so anyway, the probability is that there's a lot more of them. The other issue is that it doesn't take something moving that fast to hit Earth and cause a lot of damage. So, I mean, we have a lot of stuff in the solar system, a much more higher probability that we're going to get hit with something like that. But here again, the limiting of something hitting Earth, and if you look at the news media and this Three-Eyed Atlas deal, all they talk about, will it hit Earth? And this woman at NASA during the interview, she says, and we knew it wouldn't hit Earth. There was no danger to Earth. Well, yeah, Earth is like a speck of dust out here. The idea that one object was going to come near Earth and that if it didn't hit Earth, that there's no damage done. Right now, we are going to experience some major solar storms erupting on the sun that were caused by Three-Eye Atlas electrical discharge to the sun, causing these huge sunspots that are rolling around towards us right now.
Okay, well, let me ask you this real quickly. Three-Eye Atlas has been described as being roughly the size of Manhattan. Am I correct?
Oops, just a second here. Sorry about that. There again, the size, this is the whole, everything that's come out in the news about this comet is fog. On size of a comet nucleus, you know how you measure the size of a nucleus very accurately, and it works every time, and they have done it, but they're not announcing it. It's with radio waves. You send a beam out from a radio telescope, one of the big ones. You send out a beam, and it bounces back, and from that, you can look with your radio telescope and tell exactly how big. Doesn't matter. It's not going to see the coma. It's not going to see the tail or anything else.
No. The point is, it's next to Earth. This thing is infinitesimal.
We don't know. What I'm telling you is those estimates are based on albedo measurements. Mm-hmm. Early and those are completely wrong because they're saying, here's how it works. You take an object, you assume it's white because you think it's a snowball. There's a certain amount of light reflecting sunlight, literally sunlight reflecting off of it. And you go, okay, given the idea that this thing is, has a high albedo, in other words, totally reflective because it's white, you can calculate its size based on the amount of light coming off of it. But what if that object is black? Well, like all the comets we have seen close up are black. Okay, that means it's 1,000 times bigger than what the albedo measurement indicates. So when you say, I know the estimates in NASA is like 3/4 of a kilometer to 3 kilometers. That's their estimate based on albedo. Why don't they give us the radio telescope data, which is exact? I mean, this is a dog and pony show. And so anyway, let's go back a little more. We're talking about the extinctions in Göbekli Tepe and archaeology. One thing I've spent a lot of time in my life is with archaeology. And but anyway, I'll talk about that in a minute. But the idea that an asteroid is the only thing that can affect Earth is completely wrong. The biggest mass extinctions are due to big objects coming by Earth. And part of my weather book and one of the books they showed here at the beginning, the Planet X comets and Earth changes, I talk about large comets coming into the solar system, and I call it action at a distance, where there's electrical and magnetic effects, gravitational effects, mountain building, tsunamis. The Maya have a legend, so do the Incas. In fact, all of the ancient civilizations talk about Venus being a comet. That's what the Velikovsky story was all about.
Exactly. Velikovsky, I was going to mention him because there have been, and you're talking about these electromagnetic discharges.
Yes.
On Mars, for example, there are areas there that is believed to be the result of, and nobody at the time was claiming they had any idea how, but electrical discharges impacted the surface of the planet, left huge scarring there. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. I've been in that world since the very beginning. And when I was at Cornell, it was 79 to 81. I had been out of the country for about 10 years. And so I didn't even know who Velikovsky was. And here I'm at Cornell. Carl Sagan, who led the march against Velikovsky, is the David Duncan Chair of Astronomy. And here I am taking NASA data and claiming that comets are not dirty snowballs, that they're electrical effects and they can become planets. Oh my goodness. Talk about stepping into a beehive. And I didn't even know it. And then afterwards, I was talking to a friend of mine after the Cornell years there. And he said, I was telling him about my theoretical work, and he says, "Oh, it sounds like that Velikovsky guy." That's the way he said it. And so I started reading, and sure enough, I'm like reading theoretically what the ancients were saying, compatible completely with what my theoretical work was saying. But the idea is that these comets don't hit Earth. They come by Earth in the electrical discharges. The Tunguska event, for example, I worked with Russian scientists in the mid-90s who were boots on the ground at Tunguska. And there was no residue on the ground. There was no meteoric material of any kind. And they realized that the explosion, which was about 20 times the Hiroshima nuclear bomb, was at ground level. It was like ground zero. And so the reason they liked my work, because it explained tornadoes on the sun, atmospheric electricity, that hurricanes and tornadoes were formed from electrical phenomena in the atmosphere and all kinds of other things. But the Tunguska event was a comet coming by Earth, and it was an electrical discharge. And what happened, it was so powerful, there was a swamp, and it connected to that swamp. It dissociated the water into hydrogen, oxygen, and then it took the hydrogen and created a nuclear explosion. And that's literally what happened at ground zero at Tunguska. And so, but people still today will quote that it's a bolide. So these comets, because they have a totally different electrical potential because of the charging, can discharge to Earth. But imagine something big, like a planetary-sized object coming by Earth, gravitational waves, I've done calculations on this, and the gravitational wave of something Earth size coming by Earth at say 1 lunar distance, and at 1 lunar distance would create mountains. The literally the tsunami in the land would, that as that land wave moved along and then hit other mountain ranges, which would block it. That is one of the causes of formation of mountains. Plus, if you look at the Pennsylvania coal fields, something caused tsunamis big enough to take all of that plant material and dump it on the east side of Appalachian Mountains.
Yes.
And so, I mean, and I want to stop there and then just get back to your point. I'm aware of the people that are talking about the 11,000 year ago, the younger Dreyfus period and all of that. My book, you showed it at the beginning here, is the Real History of Man and Earth, Myths, Magic, and Mayhem. The whole purpose of that book, there we go. The whole purpose of that book was to tell people to stop picking dates and stop trying to associate one event with everything we see. Because we had the Noah's flood, that was Earth passing through the tail of a comet, 40 days and 40 nights approximately. We had the Venus event, I call it the Moses event, where Moses coming into these people out of Israel, and that the Venus event, the Mayans talk about it, the Incas talk about it, all of these civilizations talk about it, and Velikovsky picked dates, and I think he was pretty accurate. I don't pick dates. But the whole point of that book was we got to stop picking dates and start analyzing data, because it's just recently that people have had good data. A friend of mine wrote a book. I have it right here. It's called The Deep History and the Ages of Man by Mark Gaffney. And what they're doing is they're looking at the geological record for pole shifts. Now, an asteroid hitting the Earth doesn't cause a pole shift. In about 1995, I used to live in Mexico, and I went back in 95, and I spent a lot of time in my youth looking at traveling to the ruins, etc., especially the Mayan ruins. And I went back to Chichen Itza, Tulum, Uxmal, with surveying equipment and some assistance. And we surveyed and found out that Chichen Itza is like 13.5 degrees off true north. And so what happened is there was a pole shift. And if you look at the alignment of those cities and they change a little bit and you triangulate, you come up with an old North Pole in Hudson Bay. And other people, Mark Carlado agrees with this. Mark Gaffney agrees with this. Charles Hapgood did some of the original pioneering work in this region, looking at the geological record and analyzing it relative to pole shifts. And so, but there again, there were multiple pole shifts, but
we're in the midst of one right now, aren't we?
Well, there's physical and there's magnetic pole shifts. So there's the physical pole shifts need, like I use gymnasts as an example. You can't take and change angular momentum without a physical interaction. Magnetic pole shifts happen all the time, where the magnetic field in the solar wind comes out, say, reverse, completely north to south now, and they interact with Earth's magnetic field. But so there's two types of pole shift. There's the physical pole shift, which requires a physical interaction, a gravitational interaction. And so the type where, and that's why the magnetic North Pole right now is migrating up to the current North Pole. Where was it before? It was in Hudson Bay, the old North Pole. And so my point is that we're just starting to realize a lot of this. And for people to start putting dates on things like Göbekli Tepe or things like that, it's too early. It's too early to try and lock into something. And also you have to consider the different types of effects. Was it an asteroid that hit something? If it was an asteroid, we need a pretty big crater, and we don't see it. And it would be recent. So the people say, well, it must have hit the ice cap. Well, that's convenient. It's like you gotta we have to stop putting dates on things, and that's the first thing that people do, and it's the biggest mistake, is to pick a date for something.
Professor, I'm going to jump in real quick.
Okay.
We're approaching our break coming up. I got a couple things I want to throw in just to get the audience kind of lined up a little bit. Short answers I'm looking for. What is your feeling on extraterrestrials? Do you believe they exist?
Okay, as a scientist, I personally don't have any personal experience with.
I know that you have no personal experience, but what is your gut feeling to all the things that you've seen, all the work that you've done, and what you have heard?
Okay, I have personally, when I realized all of this, the electrical nature of the solar system, and I realized there were magnetic fields all over due to the current exchanges, etc. So I ended up designing 2 propulsion systems that push against magnetic fields. These are non-inertial propulsion systems. And one of them was published in the IEEE magazine. I gave talks at closed military meetings. This was completely vetted in think tanks in Los Angeles, aerospace companies. And then the second one is a passive non-inertial propulsion system that can go between stars. And that's when I was in 2004, I gave a talk.
I know where you're driving at. I need you to shorten the answer. Do you think there's extraterrestrials? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
And we could travel to the nearest star in about 7 years.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about that on the flip side, because that's an important thing I wanted to bring up. The next thing is, why did NASA use the word, or the preparatory part of the word, inter instead of intra defense? Interplanetary means we're talking about other planets, like interstate. It's travel between states. It's not intra. And I found that very unusual that they would use that terminology. Am I just a kid that had good classes in parochial school that I knew the difference between those two? Or is that a subtle something they're throwing out there in front of me?
Well, as we go into space, 3-dimensional space, they want to cover that, because the question is, once you get out in outer space, who's the law? Who owns it?
Interesting point that I was hoping you were gonna jump.
Absolutely. But the new one world government is the point here.
Right. So the reason I was so your work I think is tremendous, and when I got into a deeper dive of your path, between what you've done in the classroom and done in the field, the work on the drive system is absolutely just earth-shattering to me, literally, that I had not really seen much about this. I had heard some parts and pieces of it, but the way you laid it out. So you threw out the PSYOP, and we're going to show a film that's been put out. It's nothing. It's been fully, releasable. In fact, it's trying to explain what PSYOP is. Very quickly, what drove you to hook up the PSYOP? Because when I look at all the events that have gone on in the last decade, 2 decades, especially when we get to the disclosure, and we're going to talk a lot about that on the backside on the second hour of the show. This disclosure thing, it seems that it was tried to control it, and now that you can't control it, we're using it as a tool to control us, to drive us to a conclusion that most of us aren't getting a say in. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. All of this stuff is dovetailing at the same time. This is not an accident. Yeah. But
all right, folks, UAP Crossfire, our guest, Professor James.
The whole PSYOPs is obvious because of the broadcast level, the blanket coverage that it got.
Right. We're going to pick this up. We're going to run a film. We're going to go into our break. We'll see you in about 6-7 minutes or so. Please join us from the backside UAP Crossfire with my great guest, Professor James McInerney, and the outstanding host, the Padre, the Silverback, and Chris. Be right back.
As the world watches and listens in horror, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Wolves hiding nearby, whispering do or die around me. You say your last good night while I get
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target not the body, but the mind of the enemy.
The target of psychological warfare is against the enemy's mind.
It is words and ideas.
The ammunition used by Skywatcher.
Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldier, and at the same time
is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
gripping at my skin, the walls of night close in.
but the use of this force as an integral part of combat has now taken on new form.
As I wait to say my last goodbye.
These are the Skywatcher soldiers.
Hold on to your seats, Cosmic Explorers. KGRA Digital Broadcasting, the unrivaled #1 source for raw, uncensored paranormal and UFO talk radio, has just unleashed a sizzling online merch store. Stay cosmic on the move with accessories, rugged phone cases, vibrant yoga mats, and notebooks perfect for jotting down UFO sightings. Ignite your obsession with the unexplained through bold, exclusive gear that demands attention. Kicking off with the Supernova, the store launches 2 heart-pounding collections, KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Bishop James Long. Every item you grab helps power the network and its groundbreaking shows. Stand with the truth seekers. Act fast, score your stellar swag, and join the uprising today.
So you don't care about his life. You just care about covering up your little top secret stuff going on. Meanwhile, this man's dying. How dare you put these people in the military to defend us, and then when they come out, you just kick them to the curb.
MUFON is the voice of thousands of like-minded people who want to see change. We speak up against UFO secrecy. We engage governments and agencies around the world on the topic. We share information with the public through our journal, website, newsletter, social media, and even our own TV channel. When you join MUFON, you add your voice to the cause. Few things are more important in our time than understanding the UFO question. Join MUFON. Find your friends.
Well, welcome back to UAP Crossfire. Our guest tonight is Professor James McNary, who's coming in a little bit out of focus. I don't know what happened there. Hopefully it's not an electromagnetic field or flare that is causing that, just on a localized. Or could it be the work of a government agency? There's nice
better now
with good color. Welcome to it. I hope you enjoyed that clip that was from the Padre. He had found that and shared it. I had seen that many times in the past, and I think it has some applications to some of the discussion we had. I'm going to swing this over to Padre here in a second. One of the things we are going to run about 3 minutes or so, 3 to 4 minutes in a little bit, of the video clip that James shared in preparation for the show on the Vatican release. Don had talked about a little bit in the first hour, and we'll bring that in. Padre, go ahead and pick up with your sheets of questions there.
Okay. So the event in Siberia, which you think may have been caused, for lack of a better layman's explanation, by a cosmic lightning strike, is that what I'm understanding? Okay. Yes. So if that happened then, it's probably happened before and would likely happen again. Is this even on the radar of emergency planners? Is there anything that can be done to defend the planet from that sort of a danger? What are your impressions of that?
We're not at the level to do that now. One of the things I work on in the background is mitigation. I've been on presidential panels for mitigation of EMPs, either man-made or naturally occurring. But once you get into outer space, things get pretty big. And this is, other people have talked about this. People like Carl Sagan have talked about the various levels that a civilization gets to in advancement to where they can control the environment in outer space. Because ultimately, we've got two choices: either get off this planet in mass, where if something big happens, we can get off and survive autonomously in spacecraft for 1,000 years till things calm down, or control them. And so we're at the level now where there's an asteroid that's supposedly going to hit the moon in a couple of years, and NASA's talking about going out and blowing it up with a nuclear bomb, kind of like Armageddon type of movie type of thing. And that's a terrible decision. It's because you make thousands of pieces out of this one thing. And then, NASA has hit an asteroid with a spacecraft, an engineering feat that's remarkable.
Absolutely.
But there again, there's a danger to that because we don't have big enough spacecraft that we can hit something at the last minute. We got to do this 4 or 5 years in advance or 3 years in advance. And then if your calculations are wrong, your computer modeling is wrong, something else interferes with that, you could push it so it actually hits Earth. So we're not at the point where we can actually defend Earth, and I got a kick out of the NASA lady at the photo release, how she said, every day NASA's working to keep the planet safe. And I'm like, what? Like, are you kidding me?
I think Don's always thought that.
Well, let me just ask you, the asteroid you're referring to, the asteroid you're referring to is Apophis, and it is going to pass between the Earth and the Moon on April 13th, 2009, which is, by the way, a Friday. So it is a Friday the 13th. And it's supposedly going to pass close enough to be between Earth and our geostationary satellites, about 23,500 miles out in space. Now, if this event in Siberia was caused by a near miss that sparked an electrical discharge, if Apophis doesn't hit us, might it cause a similar catastrophic strike like that?
Good point. Good point. I really hadn't thought about that, but it's a potential. It's a possibility.
Padre, your mic is going back and forth a little bit of static. So I don't know which mic you're on, but we're picking up a little bit of static there. Could be electromagnetic discharge. Could be a solar flare that's localized in South Dakota right now. But it could also be a technical issue.
Oh, he is a meteorologist, for God's sake.
No, I mean, there you have a 450 meter by 170 meter object. So it's pretty darn big. And if it's basically skimming the outer limits of our atmosphere, already interacting with those outer portions of the atmosphere where there are charged particles, I'm concerned in light of this research you've done, Professor, of a danger perhaps that hasn't been considered.
Well, and let's take the smaller end of this possibility, because, for example, tornadoes are driven by electrical currents from the ionosphere. That's what drives tornadoes, hurricanes, etc., according to my weather work. And so maybe it could cause tornadoes or some kind of atmospheric weather phenomenon, or it could be a discharge like that would, if it touched a lake or water, where it could create a Tunguska type of explosion again. And of course, none of this is recognized or even considered in standard Tier 2 science.
It should be. Back to you, Commander.
Thank you. I'm going to have you play the video now, Bill. We're going to run a little bit of it, and I'm going to jump to Don when we come out of it, since he had some pretty strong feelings to begin with and on the prep. So we're going to run a short piece of this video, and as always, if you're interested in seeing the full video, you haven't seen it, don't have a link, just contact any one of us on the site and we can send it to you.
Can you tell me something about the Vatican? You've already told me that the Vatican actually has quite a bit to do with birth certificates. Can you tell me something else which would shock the shit out of me and the people watching?
All right, Stacy, let me hit you with one that most people never see coming. There's a massive Lucifer telescope, and it's partly funded by the Vatican. No joke. It's called LUCFR, short for Large Binocular Telescope Near Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. And while the name was later softened to just Lucifer, or Lucy, the original acronym is real. It's located on Mount Graham in Arizona, which is considered sacred land by Native American tribes, and that's not random. The Vatican has its own observatory there, run by Jesuit astronomers. Why? Because Rome's light pollution makes it hard to study the stars, and Mount Graham is one of the best dark sky sites on Earth. Now here's where it gets juicy. Mount Graham is said to be a dimensional hotspot. Native tribes like the Apache believe it's a gateway to other realms. Some have claimed the Vatican knows exactly what kind of energies exist there and chose it deliberately. Some researchers believe they're using the Lucy system to track or observe something not just physical, something that's moving in and out of our dimension. Pair that with this. Inside the Vatican Library and Apostolic Archive, there are documents and books on demonology, ancient entities, and off-planet visitations that aren't accessible to the public. We're not just talking angels and saints. We're talking non-human intelligence being actively studied and monitored by Vatican insiders. So while the world sees popes in robes and stained glass windows, behind the scenes there's a quiet network of Jesuits, astronomers, and archivists mapping the stars, guarding ancient portals, and watching something they won't admit out loud. Want to go deeper?
So before I turn this over to Decker, Professor, you brought that to us as we were coming up to the show. It touches upon something we've all talked about on this show extensively, and hopefully you've seen this and when you reviewed some of our past shows, that we have a lot of interconnectivity connection with what would be classical paranormal subjects, the extraterrestrial, the UAP phenomenon, and in science does seem to be the connection, the weave that goes through a lot of this, and it's been affected. Now, you were interested in this, and it goes on further. And once again, the Jesuits get a pretty hard knock. They always seem to be on that inside hockey kind of, inside betting kind of role in all these things. To me, I find that to be a little bit of a flag when you hear their name thrown into that. I don't have any firsthand knowledge whatsoever on what was said there. Aside from that, I do know that there is the observatory, and there has always been a large Vatican scientific press in astronomy, normally attributed to being looking for the signs of God's movement towards this planet or returning to this planet, as put in biblical recordings. So I thanks for sharing that, and it's interesting. And like I said, anybody wants the full part, Don, I'll let you start this piece off a little bit for us.
Okay, I think the Vatican has been in the middle of many, many, many things. It's got an intelligence service that I would rate probably right up there with the CIA. It's totally agenda driven. Now, in full disclosure, I am not Roman Catholic. I was raised when I was a small boy, was baptized into the Lutheran religion. Now, anybody that's followed religion at all knows that Martin Luther, who had been a Roman Catholic priest, broke away from the Vatican when he nailed his, 95 theses complaining about the church at that time. A lot of problems emanated from that over centuries, but that's not in my thinking. What is in my thinking is the fact that the church, the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, is totally agenda driven. And it's not always very clear what that agenda is, especially to we lay people. Now, when you talk about Vatican secrets, I am convinced in the archives of the Vatican, and I have a lot of reasons for saying this, and I don't have the time to go into them, but there are secrets down there the church has been aware of for centuries that involve not only demonology, whatever those negative influences ultimately prove to be, but also the fact that I am convinced that they have some first-rate data on extraterrestrial visitors that have come to this planet in the past. Now, what does all that mean in my book? Okay, it means that we're never going to know a damn thing about it. It means that they'll hold on to their secrets like a young June bride, and at the expense not only of the public at large, but science. Okay, I have as much faith in the Vatican coming forward as I do NASA. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. And
Professor, what do you think?
Charlie Deuce, it's up to you now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I sent this in, because we're dealing with many onion layers here of the issue of the psyops, of the one world government, who benefits from all of this that's going on right now. Before he died, Werner von Braun, the German scientist brought here on Operation Paperclip.
An ex-Nazi SS colonel. Let's not forget that.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And he said four things. He said there's going to be four things leading up to the institutionalization of the one world government. And he said the very last thing would be a false flag alien event. Enter 3i Atlas. It's the perfect, if it were not for all of this hullabaloo about 3i Atlas, nobody would even know it's there. This is a comet you cannot see even, I mean, with average good amateur telescopes, you can see it, but there are 5, 6 comets like that in the solar system all the time. So this one is the one they picked, and the timing is right. But you see the coalescence of all of these other factors, the disclosure movement, the release of this disclosure documentary right now. You see so many things, I can't even name them all, coming together at this time. And you hit on the issue of science and who controls science. Definitely, it comes out of the Vatican. And my hierarchy in the world, which I have learned by personal experience, is that the Vatican is very aware of things. The CIA, which you mentioned, my way of seeing things, is the police force of the World Bank, which is the Rothschild banking empire is the front agency for the Vatican Jesuit Bank, which got most of its wealth, earthly wealth, from raiding the Americas, especially the Aztecs and the Incas. Tremendous amounts of gold, hundreds of ships coming back to Spain and England, and it all went back to the Vatican. And so the world power, you look at the London, right? If you look at the Washington and the architecture and everything else that goes with it, this has all been planned for a very long time. But science is at the core of this. So why do they keep these out of date, completely incorrect theories going on? Interestingly enough, one of my other branches of study has been with prime numbers. And I have a book, I have a number of books, a number of peer-reviewed publications on this now, very advanced work on organization, new number systems dealing with prime numbers. But what I realized a long time ago is they were planning events based on prime numbers because they considered them uncalculable, kind of like devil's numbers, sorcery numbers. 9/11, the Japanese, March 11th tsunami, just go right down the laundry list. In fact, I even went as far as to pick out the prime number dates in December, looking for a false flag from space type of event that would fall on one of these prime number days. And I published those. But back to the science issue, you asked the question, why do they keep this dirty snowball comet model alive? Because that's their story and they're sticking to it. And the whole point is, you cannot, if you look at any of the YouTube channels, these startup YouTube channels that all of a sudden have 500,000 subscribers, they are all pounding the dirty snowball comet model. Anything that's not is not getting any airtime, like me. So, science is the core issue. And what do you do if you're the owner of all the world? Your banking empire includes BlackRock and Palantir and all of these other corporations that are moving very much right now to put remote sensing and all of the whole planet. China has it, Vietnam has it. Is coming to the United States. One day they're installing all this stuff. One day they're just going to turn on the switch and it'll all be there. And why is this? It's control of the public. And one of the very essential parts of this is control of science. So, and then the whole UFO issue, the real one, and I've heard other people big in the disclosure industry, I would call it, say that if there is any kind of disclosure, it'll be based on either a false flag or totally incorrect information that they're letting out for political gain in this whole operation. So anyway, it comes back to Three Eye Atlas. All of this publicity, this psyops that's going on is, and a lot of it is really hokey. But what's the main purpose? It's to get into the brains of the common person, alien spacecraft. Something could happen in like the Orson Welles War of the Worlds. All of a sudden, if the electricity goes out and the only thing you've got is your cell phone and you're getting emergency messages, that the aliens are attacking, we need the one world government. We're already seeing this coming out of NASA. Why would that woman, one of the first things she says, she stresses the fact that NASA has this international agency to coordinate with foreign governments for alien issues. Hello? I didn't know that. And how are they protecting Earth? Give me a break. But this is all in place, and what is its structure? A one world government.
Chris,
I need to.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was really fascinated by what he was saying. I'll reserve my. How's that? I reserve my time. Go ahead, Padre.
Yeah, I want us to be as accurate as possible here, and I just did some quick research. The Mount Graham in Arizona is home to a number of astronomical research facilities. Lucy, formerly Lucifer, is it has two 8.4 meter mirrors and is designed specifically to research items in deep space that might be otherwise obscured by debris and gases. It was built and funded by the Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics and the Max Planck Institute for Astronomy and the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy, along with some German universities. So it's a German operated device separate from the Vatican Observatory, which only has a 1.8 meter telescope dish. And the Vatican uses, they call it the VAT, the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, and that is for basic astronomy. They've used it to get better pictures of comets, of asteroids, near-Earth objects, planets in our solar system, and so forth. But they're separate entities. Vatican does not control what was called Lucifer.
Well,
you have to take a quick guess on the branding.
It can come through various agencies or channels, but the real purpose of the Vatican telescope was originally built to observe Hale-Bopp. That's why they built it. And it was staffed
research.
It was staffed by astronomers from the University of Minnesota, which some of them I knew personally.
Was that after Schumacher-Levy or before?
It was about the same time, because in the background, and the whole issue of Hale-Bopp, like I say, was really discovered. The official discovery by Hale and Bopp, the two amateurs, was July 15th, 1995. The real discovery was in September of 1991, when Harrington got back from New Zealand with his final data set.
Chris?
Professor, first of all, let me tell you, I'm very fascinated by what you're saying, but I want to get back to this conspiracy about the Black Swan event, because I know Black Swan events have happened through the American government, and through history, we've had false flag operations and things of that nature. But here's where I'm a little baffled as to why they would push such a strong alien thing with the same type of agenda that people are saying it's a false flag. There's a lot of information out there saying, oh, it's a false flag. It's a false flag. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. If a successful false flag would happen, it would come on suddenly, wouldn't it, Professor?
Typically.
Without any indication, it would just one day just pop up. Because, they talk about holograms that they can, project lifelike screening up in the sky because they got the satellites off the ionic sphere, the whole bit kind of a deal. But the way that you're producing a false flag, you're sort of like telling people it is a false flag before you even do it. Does that make sense of what I'm trying to
explain? Absolutely. Yeah. The element of surprise is not there anymore.
Right. And that's what kind of makes me think like, I don't think they're going to use 3i Atlas for a false flag, sir. And please debate me that I'm wrong if you feel that way, because there's so much publicity about it. and there's the carryover with it that maybe their first intention was to do it, but I don't think this is going to be the time that they're going to do it. I think they're going to do it. I just don't think Three Eye Atlas is going to be the one.
Well, if you look at the comments in a lot of the videos that are out there, especially the Avi Loeb ones, he gets a lot of positive support. But there's a lot of other ones which are AI generated. This is one thing too, is the contributing factor. Most, including all of the Avi Loeb stuff, majority of it is AI generated.
Right.
And so that's something that's very interesting because AI is coming in big time, and that actually breaks YouTube's rules. YouTube actually created a rule saying they would not allow AI generated video content, whether it had an actor or not. Then they modified it saying, oh, all you have to do is state that and make a disclosure, which is very strange. Because with AI, you can generate this massive amount of content, blank out anybody else, especially in a field like Three Eye Atlas. And so only the AI generated stuff is going to be seen because it's just so productive. There's just so much of it. But to go along with what you're saying, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't do anything for me. Like in the old Planet X days, I did more time defraying both NASA baloney and all the other baloney coming out from every corner of the world. And it really, what did it do for me? Nothing. As a scientist, I was trying to keep sanity in the world. And talking about this and all of these various factors doesn't do anything for me. I mean, what do I gain by talking about this? But the level of just the content, the amount of level, I've never seen anything like this.
Okay.
And if you look at COVID, if you look at all of the other things that have come down, 9/11, everything else, none of it holds a candle to the amount of publicity and blanket coverage that this has gotten. And like I say, it's a little comet nobody would even know about if it weren't for all of this hullabaloo about this comet.
With some of the videos that we talked, we didn't see this part of the video, but I watched the whole video and part 2 of that last video played. People are saying that frequencies are now coming from beneath the earth. Do you hold that theory too, that there's frequencies that are coming from beneath the earth, and that with this great false flag operation that these frequencies will connect with Three Eye Atlas, the whole bit? I know that's way out there, but people are actually saying that.
Well, the Three Eye Atlas is on the other side of the solar system. But I mean, electrical connections are interesting. But let me just talk about the electric fields and Earth.
Right.
The shamans from all different countries do something. They take groups of people, small, dedicated people that have training, up to the mountains. And why do they do that in their bare feet? Because they're connected to the earth, literally grounded, and then you're up higher, because if you're talking about the vertical electric field, your head is much higher. So they stand in circles and they pray. And these are connections and I've done this. So I know it's like a feeling, and you have a much better connection into the, I don't know what you call it, like a universal connection.
Like if you go out barefoot on the ground?
Barefoot, yeah. And that's one of the
work in the
things.
snow, I'm sure.
They do. You
Sorry,
see these guys
again,
walking up
go
the mountains in
out
bare
for
feet,
it
and they've got this much callus on the bottom of their feet, and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a
Come to
electrical
Buffalo, they'll know it.
and and then it's the group also. It's like you're connected like antennas, literally connected like antennas. And you notice in the old days, there was never a church, a building for a church or a temple. Christ always did his work outside.
Yeah, that's on a rock.
Yeah, and that we've gotten away from that. Now everybody goes into a church. Well, that completely blocks any electrical signaling or the camaraderie that you get from having groups of people. outside in the vertical electric field.
And my very last question for you, this is off the topic, but I got to ask you, what was your best bar at Cornell? I grew up in Cornell. I was born in Ithaca.
And what is my best what now?
The bar. What bar did you love the most there?
I'm not sure if I hung out. I did spent most of my time in the rotunda, the old library. There was a beautiful rotunda where you could overlook the valley.
I got married on Cornell campus at the.
Okay. Yeah, no, I loved Cornell, and
you might have been at that wedding, Professor James.
He probably
you may have been at the wedding. I hear it was quite a raucous get together.
I thought maybe you'd say like the ones up in College Town, the Cornell Bear or whatever and stuff like that up there.
I'm sure I was at that. I don't remember offhand though.
I was favorites.
Well, he was a beautiful groom from all reports.
I'm done.
Yes, you are. You are. You're going to be in the orbit.
You know, one thing is you got really neat nicknames for everybody, but you just called me and Chris.
Well,
I wanted to talk to you about that.
Yeah, I was calling you Super Mario, but you didn't react. But
I heard you say, and the Silverback and the Padre, and then
it may be Otis. It may be Otis after tonight and last week's show, or the last time we were on the air together. Otis from Andy Griffith, and we'll leave it at that for this.
I thought that or Barney Fife, one of the two.
Professor, I want to jump in here just to ask you really quickly. As a meteorologist, I'm interested this whole electrical interaction of forces. Assuming that that's true, and it's new to me because I was taught old school, so I haven't had a chance to really evaluate what you're saying. But what impact would that have on our long-term climate models, do you think?
Well, the interesting thing about climate is I talk about that in my weather book, the long-term weather, or what we call climate. And the end result is that we depend on the sun on a minute-to-minute basis. Mm-hmm. And it depends on the level of hydrogen coming in, which depends on the level of hydrogen in the galactic environment that we're passing through all the time. Because the solar atmosphere, the fusion is occurring in the atmosphere, not in the core. So it depends on a constant influx of hydrogen to keep the fire going, the fusion fire. And so climate, if the sun went out, let's say, we experience that at night when we go into nighttime. What do we drop? 10, 15 degrees during the night, and then the sun comes up and it warms up again. But if the sun changed by 10%, all of a sudden, hotter or colder or whatever, it would have an almost instantaneous effect on the weather on Earth. And then you have things like volcanoes going off, which can affect climate for a number of years, cool it down. So if we had a major volcanic eruption, we could have cooling. The other thing about the greenhouse effect, which is what we're talking about global climate change based on the greenhouse effect, which nobody even talks about anymore. They just call it global climate change. But they're really referring to CO2, which is the greenhouse effect. It's a bad analogy in my book because a greenhouse has a glass ceiling. The sun comes in, it warms it up, but the air can't leave because there's a glass ceiling. So the Earth is not a glass ceiling. Here's another issue with the whole model. If you take an internal combustion engine, you're burning carbon-based fuel, and the heat that comes off of that, it's a Carnot cycle. You're losing 75% of the energy right now going into the atmosphere. Nobody talks about that. What they're talking about, we're talking about massive amounts of energy going into the atmosphere on a daily basis compared to 10 years, a little bit of carbon dioxide trapping additional heat. It's like a sledgehammer versus a little jeweler's mallet. And so the Earth expels that heat every day. It goes up in the atmosphere, it goes out, and The Earth is very good at expelling that heat on a daily basis. So, but anyway, the Earth is on a shoestring thread relative to climate, and it could change. And we are just fortunate to have this amazing stretch now where we have sufficient sunlight, not too much, not too little. It's amazing balance. I mean, even though it's cold in the northern states, it's pretty livable. You get in your car, turn on the heater, drive down the road, and go buy groceries that are grown in the summertime. So we're pretty fortunate to have the climate we have now, but it's not always been this way.
Well, Professor, I got to say that, and I'm very fond of restating this on this show, especially. I am, I guess one would say, a major skeptic. I go back to the 60s, the 70s. The mantra at that time was, we are entering a whole brand new ice age. Go get your woolies because it's going to get cold. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Massive magazine articles and news reports. We're entering an ice age. Boom, we hit the 80s. Suddenly, it's global warming, the 80s and the 90s. People like our former vice president, I'm not even going to say the guy's name under Bill Clinton, was talking about the polar bears are at risk. And all these other talking heads talking about how we're going to be dying in the heat. CO2. Did anybody mention to these morons that CO2 is what makes our plants, our trees, our crops, that's what makes them grow? Now, the question is, are we going to turn into Venus? No time soon. I don't even have an SUV anymore, but I'll tell you what, I doubt that made much of an impression on a planet that's 4.5 billion years old. So what is the scam there? It's money making. Send in your carbon tax and we'll be fine. Well, excuse me, but I see that as pure, unadulterated bullshit.
Well, they definitely, it's a political football. And the reality is, with all of the decades of worrying about climate change, it's become a political football, and it really takes away one level of the reality. My opinion is we should not be burning all the oil. One of my inventions is called the wing generator. It's a very efficient wind energy system that you can make big, like gigawatt size, and put these on barges and convert seawater into hydrogen. That's what I think our future is. But there again, it's something that's basically shadow banned in the industry because all of the big investors are invested in petroleum. They don't want to stop using petroleum. The issue is that we're using a lot of oxygen because it's all native oxygen. This idea that the Amazon jungle converts all of the CO2 back to oxygen that we breathe, no. That may have worked in 1920, but not today. We're using native oxygen, and I'm amazed at the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere for jets and cars and locomotives and burning everybody's house to heat it. It's an amazing amount of oxygen that we're using. And so I think those are the real issues. And if we designed our society correctly, we could use 1,000th of the amount of energy we use. But it's a business. Energy is the biggest business in the world.
Is there a play here along the same lines? This is another tier in what you're seeing, that 3i Atlas is driving into this world government psyop piece. Do you think that these are just all steps, all surrounding, for lack of a better term, stones that lead to this, to this citadel that we seem to be creating, that only government seems to be able to save us, that we're having less and less, as you and I spoke earlier today, there's less critical thinking. of what goes at it. We don't evaluate it. You made a remark earlier about the science on the comet is that it's a snowball, which is interesting to me because to me it seems that would be diminishing, that you would lose on each passage, that you're losing some of the physical structure there. And I'm not trained, as we talked, in this area, a big fan of astronomy, but someone who likes to look at it, not really understanding the deep science of it. But I don't understand why the current process is, and what you've gone through, and folks like Tesla and other folks along the way that are just, there's not going to be a debate. We have selected what the answer is, and we're never going to defend this answer. It's settled science. And to me, that's one of the saddest terms that has ever been coined, but it's used all the time. It's settled until it's not.
Trust the science.
Trust the science, and it's settled. Correct. And where we find ourselves in all kinds of interesting problems of our creation. So, Professor, I'm going to swing it back to you. One of the things that you spoke a little bit about, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it, and I want to make sure we get a little space in there. You made a remark that with some of the drive systems that you've looked at, that you're designed, that you've theorized and put together, it would provide for us, and possibly if discovered on another planet, the means to travel and traverse large distance in space in a way that we can't seem to attain right now with the type of technology that we're using. Can you go on that particular piece a little bit more? Because I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. What we mainly use today is what are called inertial propulsion systems. That means you heat up a gas or a material or an ion engine, the same thing. You do something, you shoot it out a nozzle, and Newton's law, it makes you go the other way. That's a typical inertial propulsion system. Okay, if you're going to go to the next star, then you got to carry all this mass, and that becomes part of the payload to heat up and shoot out your engine. And then so now you have to have a much bigger engine to move the payload, which is the mass you got to shoot out the nozzle. And people talk about nuclear engines, but it's the same problem. It's the rocket problem. And so there's all kinds of issues with making bigger rockets, because then you need more fuel, and the more fuel becomes a payload, and it snowballs. It doesn't work. So what I realized early in my existence was you had to have a non-inertial propulsion system. A swimmer is a great example of a non-inertial propulsion system. And the swimmer exerts energy, pushes against water, which is the medium, and makes them go forward. So a non-inertial electromagnetic propulsion system, once back in my early days, once I realized the electrical nature of the solar system, and really I was the only person on the planet even working on this on a theoretical basis. And then I had all the data coming in from Cornell, from Saturn, Jupiter, and the other space probes, individual space probes that had charging. And I was able to explain all of this. Then I said, okay, you have plasmas which have electrical discharges, and those currents create magnetic fields, so you can push against the magnetic field, which, by the way, is another reason why comets should be associated with aliens. Because if they were coming into our solar system, the way you would brake is you would latch onto the electrical current sheet around a comet and brake with an electromagnetic propulsion system. And likewise, you would leave the solar system, you would grab onto the tail of a comet, the electrical discharge, the magnetic fields, and accelerate out of the solar system. Okay, so let's look at a non-inertial. I gave a talk on this in 2004, my talk at the International UFO Congress. It was called Electric Highways to the Stars. And it was talking about non-inertial propulsion systems. And so anyway, what you do is you have a mechanism that is non-inertial, and this is passive. It's because of the design of the spaceship. It's kind of like a sailboat. The sailboat does not carry any fuel. It picks up on but it's not a sail. It's not a solar sail. Literally is a way of connecting into the electrical currents that we now know flow between stars. And you grab onto that electrical current sheet and you can move between the stars. Now, here's the physics of the situation. If you can accelerate at 1G for constantly leaving our solar system to the nearest star You get halfway there, and then you turn it around, the propulsion system, and you start braking at 1G. You will get there in about 7 years. So that's less time than it took us to get to Pluto. Now, so interstellar travel is not, difficult. You have to understand, and the way you would leave the solar system is to grab onto the electrical current sheet that's passing through the comet, and you would get an initial burst, let's put it that way, and then you connect into the interstellar electric currents, and like I say, you can go at 1G, which is not a lot, but do the math. If you accelerate at 1G, go halfway to the next star, and then start braking at 1G, you'll get there in about under 10 years. So it's not a big deal.
So do you need the comet for this interstellar trolley car? I don't mean to minimize it at all, but I mean, it's what it sounds like. You're tapping into an available power source that surrounds the solar system, that's present through the universe. You're connecting to that, and then you're basically just manipulating the part that's pushing to the part to slow you down. I mean, that all makes sense to me. But do you need a comet to tap that?
Yeah, it helps. But another thing is that there's something called the pinch effect. If you have an electrical current in plasma environment of outer space, and you can get that to discharge by putting an object there, it's like the backyard bug killer. Where does the discharge go? To the bug. So once you start doing that, the electrical current pulls itself together, the self-induced magnetic fields. And so you increase it. It would be like an old square rig sailboat going into the wind, and then just by its presence would concentrate the wind on its sails. And the more it went, the more concentration would occur. That's what happens with the interstellar electric currents. If you put an object out there and it starts discharging, it increases the current at the object. And it's the same thing that's happening with the comet nucleus.
Professor, I have a question concerning that, actually, too. Yeah. Number one, you're talking about going to another star. What are we talking about in distance? How many light years?
4 to 5.
4 to 5 light. Okay. Now, getting there in under 10 years, that's 10 years for the astronaut. What about time dilation? What's it going to be back on planet Earth?
Well,
Is anybody even going to remember you left?
You never get up to anywhere near the speed of light. So it's not a factor.
Time dilation would not figure into it.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it does not. You don't get up anywhere near the speed of light.
And then how do you travel 4 to 5? What's your speed traveling from Earth to one of these stars 4 to 5 light years away?
Yeah, I don't remember the numbers. I've done the calculations, but if you took, it's basically physics 101 problem is you take a 1G acceleration and just do it continuously, for, a distance of what we call 2 light years, and then turn it around and brake the next 2 years. It's about a 10-year trip. But now understand, we're out in the boondocks of the galaxy. Imagine you're in a star cluster where the stars are maybe, from here to Pluto together. They're close. And so you have these star clusters. Now, the people there probably don't even know the rest of the galaxy exists because there's so much starlight coming from every direction. But they probably learned, like people living next to the ocean, the Polynesians all knew how to swim. But if you grew up in the Rocky Mountains, you probably didn't learn how to swim. And so these people probably, interstellar travel is very common. And so that's probably why we don't have a lot of activity where we are. We're in the middle of nowhere. This would be like living in the middle of Kansas in the 1800s and wondering why nobody visits. We are in the middle of nowhere in this galaxy. We're way out there.
I want to jump in on a question that came in. Are you familiar with the Electric Universe, the book and the theory that's associated with it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm probably one of the primary authors of that whole concept. That's what we're dealing with here. the electrical nature of look at the above me here, electrical processes in the universe. That's what I've been doing since like 1979 as a professional scientist.
We're coming down to about the last 6-7 minutes of the show, and I want to get everybody through one more time very quickly. I just wanted to throw one thing in, and I'd also give you a thanks right now for joining us tonight, and a very interesting talk and presentation, and sharing with us things you've worked on. NASA goes out and wants to hit an asteroid. They want to break the asteroid up. The comet up, or the interplanetary visitor. Are we setting ourselves up for a man-made Kessler effect by turning something into multiple shards that comes towards us? Would we be running ourselves into that kind of situation where now you have more mass spread out, more surface area spread out, coming through with a greater simple numbers? You have more things now to interact with satellites and other things that are in orbit.
Right, and they're spreading out. It's a shotgun effect. So you've gone from the possibility of one thing hitting to potentially thousands of things, and one of those is probably going to hit or more. So
it's amazing. When you said that,
it's not a good idea.
Yeah, it seems to me that I would look for more of a kinetic kind of mass to push it, not to try to pulverize it. I thought that was interesting. Okay, going around the horn here. Padre, please.
Professor, we haven't talked at all about your inventions, and you are an inventor. You made some unique water filters and some wind-powered generators. Which one of these, or perhaps a different invention, would you think would have the most impact if it were to be adopted at scale, and why?
I think as a practical matter, the wing generator, because energy it's like the LED light bulb. Cut down the cost of electricity, because in an average light, most of the energy goes out in the infrared and it's not usable. LED takes about 10% of the energy and produces the same amount of light. So the wing generator is of the same scale, because it converts the wind, of which we have amazing abundance of wind, very efficiently into electricity that does not have to use batteries. It goes directly into the production of online electricity, or producing hydrogen. And so it's not going to replace petroleum or our current sources of electricity. It's going to add to it so we can grow.
And can we purchase these from you, or how?
Well, right now, my only goal is I'm looking for funding, basically from Ainge. I'm very picky about funding, but I'm looking for funding for the production of hydrogen, and that's where that's headed. It'll make it someday.
Okay, well, thank you. I've enjoyed our conversation tonight.
Chris.
Well, first, Professor, thank you so much for probably one of the best shows we've had. It was very enlightening. I must confess to you that 2 courses in college I got an incomplete on was pottery making and astronomy. So this I can't make a pot, and I certainly didn't know where the planets were. So I don't even know why I'm on a UFO show, but here I am. But my question to you is, you mentioned that you believe in extraterrestrial life. Do you think they're here now?
Yeah. And I'll tell you a little story. This is a UFO conference story. I'm leaving. I was one of the speakers there. So I go get in the elevator, leaving, and we're going up the elevator, and it's crowded, full of people. And I'm standing next to somebody, and you would all know who it was if I said the name. I'm not going to say the name. But, everybody's looking straight ahead. Nobody's talking. And I glanced at this person, and his narrows it down to 50% of the people. Inner eyelid blinked, and the outer eyelid did not blink. And so, and
this is a well-known person?
Huh?
Is this a well-known person? I don't want the name.
Oh, yes. Okay. And so anyway, and other things too. I mean, not only that, but there is, a presence of lizard, let's just call them lizard people, and others. And I really don't know. I don't have a lot of personal experience. That's one thing that I was like, okay, that's real. I saw it, me, and I'm, know what I saw.
Thank you for sharing that.
Don, we're down to our last couple of minutes. Take us to the close of the show, please.
Okay, Professor, first, thank you so much for being here. This has truly been an extremely enjoyable show.
It was good for me too.
You bet. What is your final thought? We are supposed to have the closest approach of Three Eye Atlas right before Christmas, just a few days before Christmas. What is your thoughts on how this whole mishmash will end? I'm very interested in your take on this.
Well, the closest approach is interesting because the reason it's close is we're moving around, it's moving away from the sun, we're coming around in our orbit, and that alignment is very significant because Three Eye Atlas is discharging all the way to the sun, and we're going to cross that path. We have an electrical discharge of our own, and they're going to connect. So we could see hurricanes in December. We could see severe weather, and that's what triggers it. And then my prediction is that when it gets to Jupiter, we're going to see some electrical discharges, and its tail will contain a significant amount of SO2, sulfur dioxide, which is one of the primary chemical species around Jupiter, just like Schumacher-Levy 9 did. So anyway, there's a couple predictions.
Excellent.
Very good.
Well, sir, Professor James McCarney, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the crazy emails and having some great calls. Your books are fantastic. We look forward to having you on again when we can delve into it, and maybe we can do a recap on the next time we get together, what happened when it passed through. But I think you bring a very unique piece of scientific approach here that is missing in our world. And I really appreciate you joining us and the greatest audience on the planet. To everyone, for KGRA DB, we're very fortunate to have Professor McCarney with us tonight. Check out his shows and join us next week for another show. Talk to you soon.